I want to tell you a story. Not a study, not a bulletin, not a secret pulled from a filing cabinet. A story, the kind that gets passed down a farm table at Thanksgiving until nobody remembers who told it first. My grandmother told it to me the year the well pump broke, and she swore her grandmother told it to her the same way, word for word, like a psalm you're not allowed to change. I don't know if it's true. I don't think it's supposed to be true in the way a receipt is true. But it's true the way a warning is true, and I think that's worth something. It starts with a man named Absalom Yoder, though nobody in 3 counties would confirm that was his real name, because the Amish don't put their names on anything they don't have to. Absalom kept dairy cows outside a town so small it didn't have a stoplight, only a 4-way stop everyone treated like a suggestion. His milk house, my grandmother said, smelled like cedar and cold stone, and nothing else, no bleach, no vinegar, no mildew, not even in August when the humidity sat on the valley like a wet dog. She went there once as a girl, delivering eggs, and she remembered staring at the walls the way you stare at a magic trick, waiting for the seam to show itself. She asked him why his walls stayed clean. And Absalom, this is the part she'd always slowed down for, like she was handing me something breakable. Absalom pointed to a thin copper wire running along the base of the wall, disappearing into a hole no bigger than a thumb, and said, "That's what keeps the black stuff out." She thought he was teasing her. He wasn't smiling like a man who teases. That night, driving home in the dark with a basket of empty egg crates rattling in the backseat, she said she felt something shift in her, the way you feel a fever coming before you feel sick. Not fear exactly. More like the sensation of learning there's a door in a house you've lived in your whole life, a door you walked past 10,000 times and never once noticed. That's the feeling I want you to sit with, because it's the real subject of this story. Not copper, not mold, the door. In the version of the tale my grandmother told, the wire wasn't really about electricity at all, not in the way we'd mean it now. It was about attention. The old families believed, and I want to be honest that this is belief, not chemistry, that a house left alone too long forgets it's being cared for. Mold, in this telling, isn't just spores and moisture. It's neglect made visible. It's the shape that comes to fill a silence. And copper, being one of the oldest metals humans learned to trust, for water, for tools, for bells that call people together, was thought to hold a kind of memory of care. Running it through the bones of a house, grounding it in the earth outside, was less a machine and more a ritual, a way of telling the house, over and over, someone is still paying attention to you. I'm not asking you to believe that houses have feelings. I'm telling you what people who loved their homes fiercely, and who built things meant to outlast them by 100 years, chose to believe, and why the belief mattered to them even if the mechanism was never what they thought. The story goes that Absalom's grandfather set the first wire in 1943, the same year he married, and that he told his new wife it was a promise, that the house would be looked after even on the days he couldn't look after it himself. 80-some years later, so the story claims, that wire was still there, still doing whatever it was doing, and the walls it guarded had never once gone black. My grandmother loved this story because it wasn't about a product. It was about a habit, disguised as an object. A wire that forced you to walk the perimeter of your house once a season, checking the connection, noticing the damp corners, noticing the north wall that never got sun. In her telling, the wire didn't fight mold. The man who checked the wire fought mold. The copper was just an excuse to keep looking. She used to say the old-growth barns lasted longer than the new ones not because of anything hidden in the wood's electrical soul, but because the men who built them checked on them the way you check on someone you're worried about. New houses, she said, get built fast and forgotten fast. Nobody walks their baseboards anymore. Nobody sets a wire and tells it to somebody they love. There's a second half to the tale. The part she only told once, the year I turned 16 and thought I already knew everything. She said that in some families, the wire wasn't wrapped in wire at all in the years before copper was easy to buy. It was wrapped in charred bark, oak, taken from a tree that had already fallen, never a living one, because you don't take from something still growing. The bark was burned low and slow until it turned dark and brittle, then bundled in cloth and tied along whatever conductor they had. She called it, in her dialect, something that translated roughly to the black patience, because the making of it took all day and demanded you not rush the fire. She said the charring wasn't really about spores or fields of suppression. It was about smoke. Old wisdom, real and testable. knew that smoke and dryness discourage mold better than almost anything short of sunlight. The bark was an excuse, again, an excuse, to dry a space out, to bring a little controlled fire into a damp corner of the world and remind it what warmth felt like. The copper was the promise. The bark was the medicine hiding inside the ritual. I've thought about that a long time, the idea of medicine hiding inside a ritual. I think a lot of the old stories work that way. They wrap something ordinary, dry your walls, fix your leaks, open a window, pay attention, in something strange enough that you'll actually remember to do it. A wire and a bit of burnt bark is a better instruction than manage your humidity, even though they might mean almost the same thing, because nobody tells stories about humidity management around fire. So here is where I have to be the least charming version of myself and just tell you plainly. If you have mold in your house, a length of copper wire will not remove it, and burnt oak bark tied to a baseboard will not neutralize spores from 6 feet away. That part of the tale is folklore, not physics, and I don't want anyone reading this to skip a real leak repair, a real dehumidifier, or a real conversation with someone qualified to look at a wall that's been wet too long, especially if anyone in the house has asthma, allergies, or a compromised immune system, because mold exposure is a real and sometimes serious thing, not a plot device. But I don't think that makes the story worthless. I think what Absalmioda, real or invented, mine or my grandmother's, was actually protecting wasn't the wall. It was the habit of noticing the wall. The families who never had mold problems weren't guarded by copper. They were guarded by people who walked their basements every season, who fixed the drip the day it started instead of the year it became a stain, who treated a damp corner like a wound instead of a rumor. That's the door my grandmother felt shift open in the dark, driving home with her egg crates rattling. Not a secret science. A secret discipline. Dressed up as a secret science because discipline is a much harder thing to sell a lonely person on a cold night. I think about that hardware store wire sometimes. $11, 20 feet, nothing special. And I think the real forbidden knowledge was never in a Pennsylvania bulletin nobody can find. It's this: the thing that keeps a house well is the person who keeps checking on it. No cable does that for you. No bark bundle does that for you. You do that, or you pay someone else to, forever, which is its own kind of honest trade, just not the one the story wants you to be angry about. So take the story for what it is. A door in a house you've walked past 10,000 times. Not a cure. An invitation to go check your basement tonight. Actually check it. Hands on the wall, nose in the corner. The way Absalom's grandfather must have checked his wire every season for 80 years, not because the copper was magic, but because he never stopped looking. If a story like this makes you want to go find the damp corner in your own house and finally deal with it, tell me about it. That's the only kind of forbidden knowledge I actually believe in.